Welcome to the Growth Lab. This is the podcast dedicated to the business of beauty and vitality. Today, we are sitting down with Sealy Hambright, PhD, the visionary behind Frame Longevity and Base State, which is a health space in Aspen, Colorado. It's an amazing practice that has many, many unique features. It's absolutely incredible. Let's find out more. Today's episode is brought to you by MedSpa Accelerator. We help med spas and weight loss clinics solve the bottleneck of inconsistent, unqualified patient leads to achieve a predictable, scalable monthly revenue without staff burnout. Today, we are thrilled to have Sealy Hambright join us to discuss the future of GLP-1s and aesthetics. Let's get started. Good morning, Sealy.
Good morning, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited to dive into your story. I like to frame these conversations simply past, present, future. I want to start with your origin story, how you got into this demanding, rewarding industry, and then I want to pivot to present reality. You know, what's working, what's causing friction, what's keeping the doors open right now. And finally, then we'll look at future outlook, right? What's going on in terms of your vision for the next 3 to 5 years and the biggest strategic moves that you're planning. And then we'll cover full spectrum building a successful clinic. Does that sound like a good roadmap?
Sure, you got it.
Excellent. All right. Well, you're a scientist by trade, right?
Yeah.
With a very impressive CV. What made you want to get into this field?
It's a variety of things. I mean, I think the real answer is I was seeing in the laboratory that we were doing a lot of things behind the scenes. You know, as a scientist, I was what's called a program director and a principal investigator. So I wrote grants and I wrote manuscripts and disseminated science, which is great. But you're doing a lot of things behind the scenes that aren't quickly getting access to the patient, right? Or to a client. And so I was developing these neat tools. I developed a blood test that we could test senescent cells in your blood, and we patented that. And I was doing a lot of clinical research, but it was really upstream. And so what I was finding was two things. One, it was really upstream and the cadence wasn't to my personal liking. And more importantly, we were finding things that worked pretty well with some simple tests. Like I mentioned, I developed some simple therapeutics. We used a lot of senolytics in our studies, which we can talk about if you want, that are oftentimes over the counter, working really, really well, but they weren't seeing the patient. We were doing studies with them. They're slow, it's tedious. But they were very safe interventions. So part of my motivation was to democratize some of these therapies, democratize some of these tools. They're there and they're safe, and almost democratize some of the educational elements too. There's a lot of snake oil out there, a lot of bad actors in the longevity medicine space. There's a lot of supplements that may or may not work, et cetera, et cetera. And so I really like the patient-facing, patient interaction aspect. A lot of the studies we did, I'll give you one example of one study that really kind of highlighted this for me. I said we developed this blood test, right? And so we'd have these patients come in, the participants in a study, we'd take their blood, we'd do this test, this novel tool to quantify and count senescent cells. And they always wanted to come back in and get their results. And every single time I talked with the participants, I would, obviously mention this is for research, et cetera, take it with a grain of salt, but they were super interested in learning more about their own physiology themselves, et cetera. And they wanted to come back in and get retested. And so I really saw that needle move, if you will, of like, what can I do to better understand myself? What's the cutting edge science? How can I understand trackable means? And can I talk to an expert to kind of hold my hand through that process, this kind of concierge medicine kind of process? So all those things combined led me to this entrepreneurial space. I met some friends here in Aspen that had similar ethos and similar missions with this place. I'm just one of the owners here. And that really launched me. And so I just really wanted to see that bench to bedside, if you will, the breakthroughs with science, even the simple things be just applied, if they're safe and compliant, be applied to the general population.
And then now looking back to the first year when you started Base State in, what was it, 2023? What was the single biggest operational challenge that you faced that you didn't anticipate?
I mean, with any startup, there's a lot, right? The real answer is the location. Aspen is a very difficult place to build, to start a business, to hire people.
I bet.
All those things combined were difficult. We made some, I would say, incorrect decisions with the prioritization of external contractual needs. I mean, this is kind of boring, but like one thing we could have focused on better is the interior design element as opposed to the architectural elements. We diverted more funds to the architect and the interior designer, stuff like that. And then the
Makes sense.
small town build out, and it's just a really small town. But that's very Aspen specific.
It
I would
is.
say something that's a little more applicable to many businesses in this space that you'd run into that we were a little bit surprised with was the delta or the difference in what we thought would be appealing to the wellness clientele and what actually was appealing. We thought it'd be like
Mm.
maybe a price point element or a package construction element. The things we thought were cool, if you will, or would be appealing or would be used a lot therapeutically, surprisingly weren't so much. A couple of examples are in the longevity packages that I built out. I kind of nerd out on these things, right?
Yeah, please get specific. Yeah.
No, and so like you can imagine that like I have a lot of things I'd love to test. I want to collect data. The more bio data, the better. And so we had, I would say, some pretty complex packages that, if used properly, could really give us a good assessment of the client. But those bigger multimodality testing packages weren't as appealing as I thought they would. They wanted more simple things. And so when I say these packages, I mean like genetic tests and epigenetic tests and microbiome tests. If you can combine these forces, you can get a better physiological snapshot, if you will, wellness snapshot. People really want to focus on one thing, it seems like. They'll come in here with some kind of complaint or need, or they read something, and it's kind of more of a singular approach. I want to get some blood work and I want to test these biomarkers. Do you think that's right? We'll talk about that and we'll do a blood panel. But it's not that, I mean, I do firmly believe in the combinatorial approach to understanding one's physiology and again, wellness index, and obviously a combinatorial approach on the therapeutic side as well. But clients and patients oftentimes come in with more of a targeted approach. And sometimes I can talk them, through getting more tests done. But I was surprised by that because of course, in my mind, the more data, the better. But sometimes they want just a really simple approach with a simple report and a simple conversation with someone that knows what they're talking about, honestly.
What is the core philosophy or the patient experience that you built Base State around?
Well, that's a great question. Our marketing team helped us communicate that too, very well. So it's,
Okay.
I would say two keywords pop up when you mention that. I would say it's evidence based or science based. That's why I'm here, obviously, somewhat erudite, but also curated. And I would say curated is the probably the top keyword or number one priority. We want their experience to be personalized. Of course, we have packages that are preordained and programmatic approaches to their care, but I think clients really respond well to that curated, somewhat personalized approach. That does bring in technical hurdles and logistical hurdles where you have to have someone take the time, like me, oftentimes build that out to some degree. So there's some operational needs on that front. But I do think people are responding to that really well, to that curated approach. So it's like, let's learn about you with baseline blood testing, et cetera. Now we know your physiology. Here are your goals. Let's work through this and navigate this plan and decode you with some, with some bioassays. And so, yeah, I would say personalized or curated is number one. And then a programmatic approach is really important, and very evidence-based. I mean, on our website, I even put together a kind of a science page. It has a lot of citations that you can look at through PubMed and see some of the evidence behind what we're doing here.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I want to learn more about the other practice that you're starting up next year, Frame Longevity. Tell us that
sure.
this is telemed, right?
It is. Yeah. We will launch in January, probably late January. We have a landing page currently and sign up for updates if you want.
Okay.
But that also was a product of kind of filling some gaps, addressing some voids, where the knowledge gaps or where the operational gaps that we're seeing. And it is pretty obvious here in a resort town like Aspen, where it's very transient. So we're seeing clients that I would say subscribe to our curated programmatic approach. But how do we maintain that contact? How do we keep up with them? And how are we always here, even if it's virtually, to prescribe meds, to provide coaching, to get updates? How can we augment that continuation of care? It's a term we'll use in the clinic a lot, right? You want that continuation of care.
Is that how Frame Longevity was born?
And that's
Out
how
of that idea? Okay.
exactly. So it's a telemed platform that we use as a tool to communicate and provide more advanced therapeutic options, but really just a virtual aid to maintain that relationship. And so from a business perspective, we're retaining clients longer. That's obviously good. It's more allowable to do programmatic approaches, i.e. like longitudinal approaches. We can track and maintain that relationship.
Yeah.
In a transient place like this with the brick and mortar, that was a little bit difficult. I will say that our plan with Frame Longevity is we use a lot of regenerative medicine tools. A lot of my science background is in regenerative medicine and biologics. We will have a physical site in Florida for a variety of reasons where we can provide that care. But that telemedicine, that virtual health foundation really allows us, again, to crosstalk, communicate, and put them through kind of the therapeutic, systematic approach that we'd like to use. And so we have the on-site hybrid, but the virtual health platform really filled that communication void or tracking void.
Okay, so you said that there is a physical presence on the telemed side in Florida, if I heard you correctly.
That's correct. I mean, and we our investors like this too. It's a little bit insulated, but because we always say this, like telemedicine, I think is the future for healthcare in many ways, or at least going to be a much larger footprint in the future of medicine. We could do a lot of things at home. We can drop ship this and the other, but we always say, we use a lot of stem cell based biologics. You can't do stem cells over the phone or over the computer, right?
No, you can't.
Yeah. And so we obviously a big believer in these compliant, safe autologous therapies for a variety of indications. You got to have a physical site with expert physicians and nurses to administer that. But again, that virtual health platform really helps us for the intake of the patient, tracking the patient. And again, we can go on a soapbox here. I could talk for hours about this, but one of the missing links in regenerative medicine is in some ways the follow-up. It's what the therapeutic product itself. We have a lot of questions about how do we prep the patient to give the best autologous therapeutic product, but the follow-up care and the programmatic follow-up program, I mean, just overall is paramount. And a virtual health platform allows us to keep track of that, get some biodata, some metrics, see if they're responding well, and really make sure they're maintaining the proper follow-up protocol to improve efficacy of that therapeutic, and especially in the beginning before they come in as well. So prepping the patient before they come in, whether it's as simple as just fasting and some kind of dietary routine, will significantly improve the efficacy of these autologous therapies. Donor factors play a large role in that, and so we can mitigate some of that.
Cool. Well, now I want to get to the question that's on everybody else's minds. The GLP-1 and the weight loss market has absolutely exploded. How do you plan on navigating the rapid changes in the competition, especially being down there in Florida, while maintaining a high standard of care and profitability?
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly a big focus in the space for sure. I mean, look, I think there's various different GLPs, right? They work very, very well. They're now going to be indicated for weight loss as opposed to just type 2 diabetes like it was in the past, and kind of insulin regulation. There seems to be some really positive effects with microdosing in different arenas like cognitive health, et cetera, that are being explored. The good news is with GLPs, as opposed to other peptides, is that there's so much market desire that there's a lot of money by companies being spent to go through the compliant regulatory means to make a good product, like retatrutide, for example. That's Eli Lilly's drug. That has three different components. That'll end up getting through the phased clinical trials for safety and efficacy. It's a very pronounced weight loss. A GLP, again, there's three different components to it. But as a good example, because it's so popular and so profitable, we will get a safer product because it'll go through the traditional mechanisms to become safe. One of the issues with these other peptides, if you will, the class of drugs, peptides, is that there's not a lot of incentive for other companies to really put, that peptide in particular through rigorous trials or rigorous clinical studies or rigorous testing for safety and efficacy. So the good news of the GLPs is because it's so profitable and so popular, we're getting a lot of good data back, and eventually long-term data that'll really inform us as to for the dose, the chronicity of treatment, etc. And look, I'm actually a fan of GLPs in the right context.
Awesome.
I think that I'm glad that we're getting indications for weight loss in addition to type 2 diabetes. I think that's a chronic issue in our Western culture. So generally speaking, I mean, the class of therapeutics peptides as a whole, I support in many different ways, just as a therapeutic. And then the GLPs, I think, are very, very useful. And yeah, it's so popular that the profit margins are great, and you
Yeah.
can ship it to the home. And so to go back to
Yeah.
the virtual tools I mentioned earlier, here's one thing we see all the time that relates to GLPs and other kind of therapeutics like that, is that the patient doesn't know how to administer that drug, or how to reconstitute it, or how to do the injection, or what needles to use. Virtual tools allow the coach or the nurse to go on there. This is probably half our calls, to be honest, or half our
Yeah.
meetings. Is where should I inject this for intramuscular? Where should I inject this for subcutaneous? Does this look right? How do I, fill the syringe, etc. And so having those communication tools and that coaching element, that hand holding concierge element,
Yeah.
that works really, really well. So yeah,
I
I
know.
mean, yeah, yeah.
I know of one pharmacy, and they have, whenever a provider logs in and they write a prescription for a specific medication, it automatically has the dosages pre-filled out on that. For example, I know that this is true for the Wolverine, which is the BPC 157. Since we are talking about specific medications, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think this seems to have some evidence. I mean, here's the overarching disclaimer that any scientist or physician has to clearly make, is that there's not a ton of compelling clinical data that support efficacy and long-term safety for many of these peptides, right? Now, we
Okay.
spoke last time, Jason, and like, I think there's a good reason for that. There's a couple of reasons why that does. Just because it doesn't exist doesn't mean this is a bad idea, or it's not safe, or we're not on to something.
Mhm.
But it should be said. And the reason why you don't have a lot of that data is because it's really simple and I'll answer your question more directly in a second, but really quickly, I mean, it's easy to synthesize these peptides in a compounding pharmacy. It's just a chain of amino acids, right? And so, like, protecting that is difficult. The intellectual property, because you can make an analog. Some neighbor down the street can make an analog and it works just as good, kind of. And so it's like really hard to
Yeah.
protect those things. And a lot of these smaller companies can't afford a $3 million clinical trial like Eli Lilly can. So we almost don't expect it. But at the same time, it is nice to see that sometimes. And I will say preclinically means not in humans, like in cells tested or in animals tested. BPC seems to have really positive effects on tendon cells, tenocytes, what they're called, and increasing neovascularization, or increasing blood flow through new vessel formation, angiogenesis properties. It really promotes VEGF that actually leads to that. It's a growth factor. And that evidence looks great preclinically. So in this space of therapeutics, the first thing we always focus on is safety. Efficacy is difficult to really nail down, even for any drug in a clinical trial. So to answer your question about BPC, there's some limited evidence, but the primary question is, it's safe. It certainly seems to be safe, and really that safety is determined by the compounding pharmacy. What's in that vial? Can they prove with through third party testing, what's
We
actually
were
in that
talking
vial?
about that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah. Third party
sterility,
CFAs.
purity, LPS levels, etc. So that's always what I try to inform clients about, is the sourcing itself. Get these third-party COAs. You want to get consistent COAs, not just one from batch 2 years ago. And obviously stability is key too. If you're going to have it at home in your fridge, you want to get a longer bud date, or a best use date bud.
Mhm.
And there's now some good biochemistry techniques that these pharmacies are leveraging to increase that bud date, so you can keep it longer for yourself. So long story short, I believe in that class of drugs as a whole, because it's a very targeted approach. It's a very simple amino acid chain that signals through a binding mechanism at a receptor, oftentimes, that can elicit this mechanistic output we want. So I like that very clean targeting mechanism as a whole. And some of these have some data, like preclinically, like BPC. And oh, by the way, this is a natural peptide that's produced by your body too, just like insulin. Insulin's a
Yeah.
peptide technically. So
Yeah.
whenever it's an analog or an actual mimetic with the same sequence, that kind of increases the safety index too. Like, this is a naturally occurring peptide. But then there's dosing concerns we could talk about. You got to think about when you're taking it, how much you're taking. You don't want to be supra physiological. You don't want to send a huge robust signal. You want to take it at specific times and specific doses. The growth hormone analogs or secretagogues are good examples of that. But overall, I think it's promising. And I really think, I know I'm talking a lot, I apologize, but I really think these peptides like a BPC or a ipamorelin or CJC
Yeah, those are great.
or Sermorelin or even a Pidolon, which seems to be really popular now. I think these are going to be primarily used, and this is the way we will use them, as adjuvants to other treatments or therapies, especially in the regenerative medicine space. Because again, you
Adjuvants
mentioned
meaning supplements.
like additional combinatorial approaches for for a centralized indication. So, for example, in orthopedics and orthobiologics, we oftentimes will use a PRP or a BMAP or a stem cell based therapeutic for knee degeneration or cartilage degeneration, like osteoarthritis. That could be significantly augmented by some of these peptides that can promote pro regenerative phenotypes in the cell, or in a muscle condition or a muscle injury or a rotator cuff tear. You can imagine
Okay.
that you can inject those at the site along with the biologic therapeutic like a PRP, and you're getting the growth factors, a cell-based stem cell like an MSC and a BMAC, plus the peptide that's the signaling molecule. So that combined soup, if you will, is probably a more pro-regenerative treat. So I think they'll be used a lot in those cases, and we certainly will as well.
Okay. Awesome. You got the new business that's starting up, the telemed company, and you've still got Bay State that's out there in Aspen. You've got a lot going on. Tell me, I guess, a little bit more where the strain and the chaos is starting to show up for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with the new startup, we're wrapping up fundraising. So fundraising is always uh, just a long hassle.
Yeah, you're just
But
passing along the collection plate.
yeah, it's required. In some ways, it's fun, but it's a drag and a slog, and obviously time consuming. It's part of the process. So that's still going on for Frame. And then here it's like for what's great is with Bay State, we've been open 2 years. Now we're starting to have those, we're cash flowing a little bit. Now we're starting to have those conversations. What do we do next? How do we expand? How do what are we going to add next? Are we going to focus on services here that we can add that are additive? Or are we going to focus on a different site, for example? And so now we're starting to think about our next site. The original intent was kind of a unit economics model where we would kind of copy and paste different sites with our brand identity here in Aspen. And so now we get to start thinking about that. And that build out is certainly going to be cheaper and easier after our experiences here. So two different
You
things.
thinking about
Yeah,
Denver?
it's a great question. Denver works in some ways because we could have a pop-up style location there again, because the brand identity probably resonates a little more in Denver because they're familiar with Aspen. I think most people are, but like especially people in Denver. It's
Mhm.
closer. So from just like a leadership perspective, having a presence there is just easier, to be honest. It's a quick flight to get over there. But at the same time, like, we could really benefit from a larger metropolitan area, even bigger than Denver potentially, and bring in more people and try to leverage that Aspen brand identity elsewhere. There's a big pipeline of Southern Florida patients that come to Aspen. So Florida's really been on our radar for a while, but we wanted to get a larger area that will certainly mitigate some of the small town concerns or issues we've had in Aspen, but so a more robust setting in a much more defined service catalog that we now know is appealing. And so yeah, so thinking about site two is certainly our focus for Bay State right now. And Frame, it's fundraising, and then site one is the focus, which will hopefully be summer of next year.
Okay, so we got those two things. What about your current patient acquisition process? What's the first point of friction or strain that you feel on the team every day? You mentioned that over in Aspen that it's getting a little bit better, right? That you're getting more and more people that's coming into the doors and stuff like that. But what's the I want to focus on the friction or the strain.
Yeah, yeah. So it's obviously a great question. This is always on top of our mind, right? As business owners, there's a nuance to that question, or nuance to my answer, that it's a nuance to the strain, I guess, that I think you'd appreciate. So customer acquisition, our typical means of doing that are working decently well. Like our SEO is working pretty well. We pop up pretty high through Google. People that are traveling, we know what they're kind of searching for what they might want here. The thing faced more recently that we're still combating when we're trying different things is the patient that walks in the door, their understanding of what our offerings are. So one of the trade-offs of
Mm.
having a very thorough menu of options and offerings, from tons of different blood tests to all the holistic therapies to different massage therapies. We even have facials here.
Wow.
To sell that or translate that or communicate that to the client really quickly has been difficult. So the problem is, the pain point is, people come in, don't know we offer X, Y, and Z. Once they do, oftentimes they'll want to purchase it, or they'll want to use it, or they want to get that service. We have a great staff here that can highlight that. But we want them to know that when they come in the door, right? That we could do all this blood work, that we do
Yeah.
have lymphatic massage and the Balancer Pro, that we have an HBOT. And so we need to increase our awareness factor. And so there's some targeted ads locally that we're doing, like meta ads, to highlight that to people visiting for events or something. So if it's a big party event, we might push the IVs, for rehydration. If it's an athletic event, or like some kind of competition, or some kind of mountain run or something, we'll kind of push the HBOT and put that out there locally, because we really want people to understand, even through the website, that we have all these offerings. That's a really difficult job. There's a science to that. To communicating that quickly
Oh, absolutely.
but
Yeah.
robustly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Video is a great platform for that, for educating in a short amount of time, especially if you're talking about relying heavily on marketing and pouring that money into Meta and communicating that way. I mean, that's certainly one way.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
great point, Jason, because the one thing we've been doing recently that I do think is moving the needle is, for our social pages, we are adding more experiential video content. It used to be, I'm talking about this or that, what is NAD, what is glutathione, or it might be a nurse giving an IV. But we're doing these more what we call experiential videos. We have someone walk in, they make the appointment, it's super quick, they meet with a nurse, they get multiple things done at once. So they're going to go get some blood work done, then HBOT to follow up, then red light therapy. And we're just adding all these like combinations of experiential content. And we're seeing that move the needle a little bit, where people are understanding, hey, I saw you had the infrared sauna, but also the red light. We could do those together. Can we do it? So that's on the social side, that, to your point, that video content that highlights the experience, even like getting in the shower and like all the different elements of the room, and someone walking from the sauna to the cold plunge and getting in and out. That's been helpful. Then people know, oh, it's a private room. The cold plunge is adjacent to the sauna. You can go back and forth. And the whole thing. It seems trivial and simple, but that's been really helpful.
So it's kind of showing them how it would work if you were a patient or a customer that came into the practice and purchased this therapeutic and went through the process. And then they're able to see that and say, oh, okay, I can experience that as well in the same manner, right?
You're
Is that the
exactly
thought
right.
process? Okay,
I've
cool.
been I've been doing content where I would describe our offerings, like we're talking right now. Like, do you care about your inflammatory index, if you will, for your blood, where we can test that? That's okay. It's informative. But watching someone walk in, get in the HBOT, then go
Yeah.
get in a red light, then go to the sauna, that seems to stick more. It's a visual tool, obviously, and people realize, oh, all these things are available. I can do all these in one day. That's been
Okay.
helpful. Yeah.
Good. Good. I'm glad that we covered that. That's really good. If you could eliminate one time sink or repetitive task that distracts your most highly paid staff, whether it be nurses or PA or yourself, from delivering patient care, what would that be?
Yeah, obviously, great question. There's some simple little things. I mean, there is some payroll elements there, to be honest.
Okay.
That's kind of a
Payroll. All right.
that's
What
kind of a
else?
benign answer.
Yeah.
There's also some, I would say, startup issues with equipment. This is kind of unique to us to some degree, but I'm trying
Yeah.
to
That's
answer I'm
okay.
trying to
We want
answer
to
your
hear it.
question as honestly as possible.
It's okay. Please do.
And maybe there's a learning lesson here for, I mean, for someone else in this space, is that we have lots of equipment. We probably could have done a better job at either securing good use of that equipment, or ensuring that that company has a great platform to fix broken equipment, or a routine staff, or someone on call, because that can really shut us down. So we actually have staff that are fixing small things. I've actually fixed cold plunges multiple times, and replaced fan motors, etc. And that is a huge time sink. It's a time sink for the personnel. It's also a time sink for the Well, it also affects the patients too, the clients, so they can't use the equipment. So I mean, it's a weird answer, but like I would say that like having again proper warranties and a good system in place with the vendor, and so they're not like a new vendor, they're kind of like an established vendor that's set up that can and fix these problems when they arise. They have like a team that might do it, etc. So that's a big thing too. Yeah, yeah, those are the two main ones. I mean, there is the element of the transient nature of this resort town and staffing for that. It's a very dynamic, it comes in waves, how busy we get that can be somewhat unpredictable. So there'll be times where we're not properly staffed or we're overstaffed. And so that's always there's a science to that too that we're still figuring out.
Mhm.
And we have some tools there that we can use.
Okay. All right. I'm not sure if I get so the time sink. What was that? I'm sorry if you could distill that down for me.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's certainly the time sink with the equipment issues that will happen to
Right. That's
anyone
right.
for sure. And it might be a little specific to us. It's hard to get people here to fix things, but
Okay.
the
Maintenance.
solution, the learning lesson was find vendors that have a maintenance program or a warranty program that's well established and well vetted. So not like a brand new vendor if you're a brand new company. We
Okay.
learned that lesson. That is a big, we actually have suffered from that. It's much better now, but that was a pretty big time sink. There's the obvious payroll kind of things,
Okay.
but yeah, I mean, those are for us,
I
those
think
are the two biggest ones.
we covered that absolutely. When a consult is booked there at Bay State Longevity, how do you ensure that the patient is fully qualified and ready to show up and move forward rather than just, and because, Aspen, it's kind of like a transient kind of town. You got a lot of museums that are there. You people that are moving through. How do you know that you have a patient that's qualified, ready to move forward rather than just being a tire kicker, taking up valuable calendar space, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's well. For one, there's the intake process that like before they come in, there we get some information from them that helps a lot, especially for the clinical items. So we
Tell
can
us
get
about your intake process.
yeah. So when you sign up online, you will provide some basic information. If you're already on file, it's already there. It's easy. For a variety of services, you'll provide a credit card as well because we have cancellation policies, etc. So
Okay, very good.
you're coming in the system, through our platform, which is great when they come in. There's some clinical intake, but we had that down pretty well for that workflow where they come in, we're getting baseline vitals, which you have to do on site the day of. You can't do that as an intake. Getting some brief medical history, which is again important to do that day. That could be done by a nurse, but it can also be done by the front desk. So they're well equipped and have the tools necessary to measure oxygen saturation and blood pressure, for example. And that's very solidified. I will say most people that do come in here want to kind of get in and out because they're doing a variety of things, like you mentioned. So we don't run into the tire kickers as much.
Okay.
But that intake process with their consents, if it's for sauna and cold plunge, there's a consent process with that. And their general information and credit card, that makes it so much easier. And we really were bothered by that in the beginning because it's like, do we ask for the credit card now? It's like do
Absolutely.
we
No,
do we
that's a
do do we get
yes.
their email now? Do we get it's like it's kind of personal, but it flows much better to your point, Jason, because you don't want them here taking up the time of the front desk or the nurses in particular. That has
Yeah,
been a tremendous help because they come in ready to go. And I think people understand that at this point. That's kind of required, especially for clinical services. It's like, hey, we got to have these things kind of preordained and built in. So that admin part is done online. Even if they call, we'll get information over the phone. Maybe not credit card, but we'll get the requisite information to have them in the system. And that reduces time significantly at intake in the studio. That's a
okay.
big deal. Yeah.
Good, very good. We wanna make sure that everybody's, on track and not wasting up any time.
Yeah, you're
That's
spot
good.
on. You're spot on.
Absolutely.
And everyone's pretty
Fantastic.
cross-trained. When you have a small business, everyone's kind of cross-trained. So there's some obviously for clinical needs, you have to have a compliant, licensed clinician. But for everything else, there's a lot of cross-training. Most people can do most jobs. It's great. It works better.
I wanna talk a little bit more about your approach for training and retention for, your aesthetic providers, right? Because obviously you're a co-owner there, but especially when it comes to balancing their clinical expertise with the need for sales and conversion skills.
That's huge. I mean, that's probably the principal focus at the moment when it comes to the personnel here, especially clinicians. And it might be one of the most important elements we look for probably in really any personnel, but or any employee, but that we see the biggest bang for our buck. So you mentioned like, we're in retail medicine, right? Well, just it's 100% true. We
Hmm.
understand that. We want our staff to understand that. And so, I mean, you obviously want to decouple economic gain from medical treatments, but we do a lot of very safe, very basic medical treatments, so like fusion therapies, etc. There's more advanced things we can do, or we will do with my other company, but here it's there's a significant training element to highlight that. So we have different training programs that highlight what pairs well with each other. So like the IV plus this intramuscular injection, or the infrared light in the saunas, IR sauna plus red light bed or blue light bed. These pair very well. So there's a big training element for the new employees to make sure they understand that. And we see this a lot with the nurses, I will say. And so we will hire nurses that they're fantastic healthcare providers. They're fantastic nurses. They came from the NICU or the ER, or they were even intraoperative roles. But that is a very different environment than here, right? So we actually see more of a learning curve, which they're completely competent to do, but more of a learning curve with those nurses, because this is retail medicine and not just typical medicine. And
Hmm.
so we have
Yeah.
to really inform them about these therapeutics, why they're important for wellness and longevity, and more importantly, what again pairs well with each other and the patient interface. There's a lot more patient facing, a lot more patient time with the nurse, as opposed to just stick the IV and walk away. We really want to promote them having a conversation, seeing how long they're here, and back. Here's what goes well with us. I mean, there's just more communication strategy and a lot more interaction that we really have to train the staff up for sure.
Okay. Okay, good. Thanks for getting to that. What is the biggest challenge in translating the excitement that a patient feels from, seeing maybe one of those experience ads that you were just talking about, going through that patient experience, going through every single section of that. What is the biggest challenge in translating that excitement into a seamless, high touch experience, one that they'll actually reach out to from the clinic? Do you think and it's kind of a double pointed question, right? Because, one, we kind of already answered that a little bit, right? We were talking a little bit about, going through that experience, right? Kind of where the camera falls around, right? But then I kind of also want to know, how are you translating that from like a video that's maybe shown on Meta, something like that, into a seamless high touch experience, one that when they were actually reach out to the clinic and book.
Yeah, great question. I would say there's two elements to that. One, we kind of talked about this a little bit, is the fluidity of the experience. Them being able to come in, they're checked in quickly, their room is ready, or the IV's being prepared, whatever the service might be. The massage room is ready to go. Massage therapist is here. That fluidity of experience, that's first and foremost the number one thing, which I think our tools currently and our staff currently do a great job of that, of making sure
Okay.
that's fluid and streamlined. And we have like SOPs involved. Again, to when they come in, we're holding their hand almost literally to take them where they need to go. And we could take it from there. So we don't want any disruptions, any waiting. I mean, of course we get busy, but like we really try to mitigate that. So because that experience is, we have a sauna or a spa like setting, it's really nice. And so like, that's what they're saying. We want them to have that kind of attention to their care. And again, like a very fluid migration through whatever they're doing here. And the other thing is the look and feel. And so like, obviously when we do the content, the rooms are pristine, everything's great. All the lotion bottles are all full, for example. It works well. The towels are properly folded. It looks really great. We really do a good job and really focus on maintaining that actual aesthetic and that look. We want to look just like that when they come in. And that's easier said than done sometimes. You might not make sure,
Yeah.
so we have like even a towel folding protocol, right? Where it's rolled up a certain way and looks so, and so like, I think they want to see what they saw in the video, and so
Yeah.
a lot of.
The vision needs to be congruent, right?
Yes. Yeah. So two things there. One, we do a really great job of maintaining our space, which I think is beautiful. but we also don't put in the visual content anything that's not our space or it's really embellished or something, um, or, so where we have like Fiji water coming out of the wall or something. It's like, no, it's like, this is the site. So we actually pay a lot of attention to kind of recapitulating that visual environment with a very clean, aesthetic appeal and a very organized room and a very organized experience overall. I mean, those are simple things. I mean, it's not like a very provocative answer, but
Right.
that really is a big focus of ours. Again, the fluidity of the customer experience, their hands are held the whole time, and that maintaining that visual aesthetic consistently and rigorously. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about your future outlook for the next 3 to 5 years. I want to make sure that we're following the roadmap that I laid out earlier. Tell me about what you think that you see for Bay State in Aspen. Do you see that second location opening up in Denver? Tell me about the telemed practice. Do you see that thriving? What do you envision for the future in the next 3 to 5 years?
You kind of nailed it. I can certainly assign some timelines or numbers to that. But for Bay State, we will certainly have a virtual health telemed offering. We'll work with my company to do that. Frame, which I mentioned earlier, that's important, and that's for the same reason we talked about earlier. That continuation of care. So we want people to come back when they visit Aspen. Most people are visiting Aspen not for the first time. They're coming back. They come here routinely. We want them to come back and be a member here, and we have continuation of care when they're at home. And we can send things to their house if need be, and do the thing, and drop ship items there, do some testing there. So those virtual tools certainly on the docket for 2026, spring 2026. So we'll have that here. That'll be a big help for client retention, and really again kind of expanding our brand identity too a little bit, because they'll talk about with their friends that they're going to be at home, etc. So that's a big focus, and obviously Site 2 again, our model here with Bay State. We love our kind of boutique like center here for sure. But the original plan is to some degree copy and paste the services and offerings to a different location and leverage the Aspen brand identity here for luxury retail medicine. And that's it. That's in the books now. That requires getting some capital from different places, as you can imagine. So that's a bigger play. But the telemedicine platform, virtual health, communication tools, if you will, with our clients will be a big help for us in spring 26 for sure, and certainly
What's the biggest
grow our
goal?
clientele.
Like the first checkpoint, like the first hurdle.
For any of those two endeavors.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, for those 2 things, for either Bay State or for the telemed practice, like, is it like 1 million in revenue? Is it 5 million in revenue? Is it X amount of customers? Where do you checkpoint at those progress points?
that's a great question. We would like to think that the addition of telemedicine, for example, or these virtual health tools to communicate with our clients would not only retain patients, but we really hope to, I wouldn't say double the clients. We'd like to see a close to some kind of full change in clients that are part of our membership packages. So that is one way or one tool in which we can bring in more people that might not be here in Aspen because of the offerings that we would have and other kind of drugs that we can prescribe, et cetera. And so a big goal of ours would be we just call it doubling. We don't have a specific metric with that, but we'd like to double that in 2026. But these are different member types, right? So you have the people that come here on site. That'll be a different type of member than a subscription member that would be telemed. But we could certainly add just total membership numbers, which would be a big push for this. There's some fundraising
What
goals
number are
and
you
needs
looking
for the.
at? I'm looking for a clearly defined goal. What's a number for you? What's
Yeah, we've talked about this, and it's like we don't want to sound like overzealous. It's always we've internally argued back and forth
It's
what's
okay,
reasonable.
Sealy,
Yeah,
don't be
but
bashful.
yeah, 'cause, but we really think that we could that the goal we have for the bringing on subscription based. We're talking about the telemed push here in early
Sure.
2026, right?
Yeah.
We think we could get at least 20 a month, and by month 6, we should be able to double that to 50 a month for a
Okay.
variety of reasons, word of mouth kinds of things, general growth and cadence of these kinds of these modalities. And so you can imagine, and that the revenue change that it's associated with that is obviously very significant. And on just the telemed side, with no additional overhead, those gross margins are even better, as you can imagine. So we would start with around 20 the first few months, and then by month 6, we would double the new incoming customers. I would say 50. That's my goal a month. We want to retain those because they would join as subscription clients in a programmatic plan. It's 3 to 6 months to 12 months long.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine it just keeps combining and keeps aggregating, if you will, over time.
Absolutely, and then you can transition that patient to another aesthetic service to increase their long-term aesthetic value into other stuff like red light
Absolutely.
therapy or other types of services that you offer.
Absolutely. And what's interesting and kind of fun is to find like the microeconomics involved in each of these subscription plays where it's like, well, what do they get from the on-site when they are here? What can we get? What can we give to them off-site when we're shipping things? If they sign up for this long, there's obviously a discount associated with that. How much time do they get with people like me? We're figuring that out still. We have some ideas, but I think it's kind of fun to play in that sandbox where and we'll learn a lot. So I would say understanding those economics, and what moves the needle on the subscription subscribers and the acquisition of new customers by summer 26 would be a big for us to have a really good strategy. They understand what's really working. How can we be consistent with that?
Okay. And I think it's entirely possible for you to get to 100 patients in the telemed practice by summer. I know you said 20, right? But I think 100
I was
is
thinking 20 a month,
yeah, 20 a month.
like
Yeah,
20,
increasing every month.
yeah, and then like by month 6, I'd want to get 50 a month. That'd be
Okay.
yeah.
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 Okay.
And this is modeled off other successful, somewhat similar entities. And that increases valuation. I mean, if you have those gross margins associated with subscription based clients, again, just talking about telemed here, your CAGR is great
Yeah. Oh yeah.
because of no overhead. And then you could have, I think with probably a few thousand clients, you're looking at like with revenue that's associated with that. I mean, that's very PE appealing, you know, and that could be worth tens of millions of dollars, just those clients alone. These are just generalized numbers, but but yeah, I mean, like, I think that's certainly our goal, and I think it'll work here because our clients are so transient anyway. So I think it's going to be really appealing.
I think I've got something very valuable for you that's upcoming. Next week, I have the podcast recording for the CEO of Get Thin MD, which is also a startup. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but she is the CEO of a telemed practice, and they scaled to $20 million this year
Well,
from from nothing
yeah,
in 1 year.
real in 1 year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So I'll definitely get you the link for that as well.
absolutely.
It's very
Yeah,
exciting. Fantastic. We have run way over our allotted time, but
yeah, it's fine.
I know that we have covered so much ground already, Sealy, and thank you so much for being so candid about the operational reality of both businesses. We have covered a
Yeah,
ton
sure,
of
of
ground
course.
already, from
Yeah,
your origin story to what's working right now. And I know that our value, which is other med spa owners, is going to get immense value from this. So, with that, what I'm going to do is go ahead and wrap up the recorded portion of the Growth Lab. And thanks so much for being with us here today.
absolutely. Thanks, Jason.